Hi, this is Richard Edelman, and you're listening to The Trust Makers.
Hello everyone, I'm Jackie Cooper, Global Chief Brand Officer and Senior Advisor at Edelman. Welcome to a special series of The Trust Makers. We're recording on the ground in the sun at the 2023 Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity. Over the next few days, I'll be speaking with marketing professionals about this year's festival and gather their insights on Edelman's 7th annual report on the brand trust, the collapse of the purchase funnel. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Benjamin Braun, the Chief Marketing Officer for Samsung Europe. Since he began in the role in 2019, Benjamin has developed multiple award-winning campaigns. Before Samsung, he led marketing at Audi in the UK. Benjamin prides himself on leading teams through creativity. Benjamin, welcome to the Trust Makers.
Thank you, Jackie.
Today, we're going to sort of stagger through. We're on the 4th day of Cannes, and we've all had a lot of conversations, a lot of experiences, I'm sure. Sitting here 4 days in, what do you think you kind of come away with? What kind of conversations have you had this week?
The importance of SPF 50.
Okay.
Where, as I get older, I realize that using suntan lotion, is super important.
And are you spreading this wisdom generally beyond this podcast? Has this been a recurring theme for you?
I think generally about Cannes, there are a couple of things that I've observed. I think Cannes has kind of gone through generational evolution. When I came to Cannes the first time around, it was very European. It was very brand and marketing focused. Slowly, the Americans joined and became less of a European event. And then something happened. It went from being focused around brand and marketing, and what we could see were a lot of the big consulting firms, strategic consulting firm arriving, and the conversation slightly shifted from just creativity to the effectiveness of creativity. And then COVID hit, it went into a bit of a hiatus, and it's been back for 2 years now. And a thing that I appreciate now is that you can achieve a lot through video calls, which has become the standard of our working day. But if you can compress the face-to-face meetings into a short period of time, you can potentially achieve even more. So I think it's absolutely fantastic as a father with 3 young kids to be able to not travel as much on business, to be able to do a lot of things over video calls. But there's still something deeply rooted in physical face-to-face interactions. And maybe that allows you to build trust faster. I recently met with Professor Dunbar, who works at Oxford University, and he talks about the importance of having friends. And he says that you need to have 5 friends to statistically avoid a depression. Not 4, not 6, 5 friends. And then he talks about how you develop those friends. And he says, statistically, it takes 260 hours to take an acquaintance to become a friend. And I'm wondering what happens in Cannes is, are you able to fast forward some of those video calls? Or can you put that on fast forward and in face-to-face environment, do a handshake deal for a partnership or a media investment or a great creative idea?
Oh my God, I love that. And, you know, it was funny because last night I went to the Brand Innovators dinner, and I've known will.i.am for many years and sort of known various members of his team. But last night at this dinner, I met a woman that I've had many hours of video calls with, but never in real life. And it was instinctive for both of us that we saw each other and hugged each other so much. First time we've ever met. We're professional colleagues, so we haven't done the 260 hours. We're not friends, we're professional colleagues. But we've been through a lot of calls, and it was like a fast track. And we were both laughing and saying afterwards, this would never have happened pre-COVID. So I think there's a gratitude that when you actually get to be in person, there's a gratitude. And there's a kind of fast track, I think, definitely here. This Cannes, I feel, is quite different from last Cannes. I feel there is much more of a sort of intensity and energy of wanting to get things done. I think it's just that we finally do feel that COVID's behind us. Do you think that the week here has been about sort of inspiration and vision, or have you had experiences where it's actually been about business and planning, or has it been a mix of both for you?
The thing that's important for a marketeer as myself is the effectiveness of the campaigns.
Yeah.
Marketing shouldn't be about or only about pretty pictures. As a progressive marketing organization, you need to realize that you're a business function. And as that business function, you need to be able to demonstrate scientifically to the CEO and the CFO the incremental value, usually measured in incremental revenue and improved profitability that you're bringing through your marketing campaigns. And Cannes is really exciting. You see the best of the marketing campaigns. You see some absolutely amazing things. It gives you, it encourages you, it motivates you, it stimulates you. And where I find it extra exciting is when someone presents, this is the business challenge that we took, and this is the creative solution that we delivered, and here are the results. If you have those three components, what the business challenge was, what the creative solution was, and what the results were, then I walk away feeling I'm fulfilled. That was a really good campaign.
All aspects.
Yes, but the risk is when we only cover one of them and you don't see that entire broad view of what creativity and what campaigns are.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I'm going to move on to the annual trust study, and we obviously at Cannes concentrate on the brand study, and it's quite a sobering one in some ways, an opportunity in another, because we found that consumers are feeling highly vulnerable because of everything that's going on in the world, and they're feeling vulnerable in their personal lives, and they're feeling vulnerable from the threats that they are experiencing in society. 70% said they're worried about climate change. How are you addressing fears about climate change in your company, and how do you kind of encourage or help the company address those things in the marketing that you're doing?
In our team, we have a function, a CMI function that does consumer insights and research. And what became very clear is that, as you said, environmental impact is very important to people in Europe, but also the consumption of energy, because as you know, energy costs have more than doubled in Europe, and it's having a real impact on households. So we had to think about what we as Samsung, one of the biggest consumer electronics brands out there, what can we do as a company to help our customers? And to kind of give you a couple of examples, our new washing machine, it's pretty smart. I know people have been using the AI word a lot during Cannes. It uses AI. So when you throw in your laundry into the Samsung washing machine, it automatically detects how heavy the load is. It checks how soiled your clothes are. So in my case, with 3 young kids, a lot. And then it only uses the water, the detergent, and the time that's actually needed in order to clean the clothes. Because in the olden days, you could put in a sock into the washing machine and switch it on, and it would go for 2 hours and 42 minutes and use loads of water and loads of detergent. So this washing machine is slightly smarter than that. And what it does, it saves up to 70% on energy consumption and water, and that's real savings. It also pretty smart because when you're running out of detergent, you kind of fill it up and it goes for a long, long time. It just doses it automatically depending on how soiled your clothes are. When you run out, it automatically orders you new detergent, so you can take that out of your kind of mental to-do list and one less thing to worry about.
This is going to be my new friend, this washing machine. I'm loving it.
Another way that we're trying to help our delicate planet is making sure that we stop microplastics from being released. And once again, these damage our ecosystem. And a lot of clothes contain microplastics. So in the Samsung washing machines, we work with Patagonia, the clothing brand, and we've created a filter that stops 58% of these microplastics from escaping. And that's real change. That is something that really stops half of those microplastics from releasing.
And I think it's really interesting, the first example you give me about the washing machine, because one of the themes that we've heard here at Cannes is that AI is scary. And so the more that we see AI actually making a difference for positive experiences, it sort of balances this fear that we have that AI is going to take over the world. And I think also we'll come on to talking about Gen Z a little bit, but that kind of messaging that you've gone through today is really important, I think, for Gen Z customers, because they want the technology and they want the breakthrough, but they also want to know that they're being respectful to the planet. The societal thing is such a strong theme for the study. 73% of people say they place more value on brands that increase their sense of safety and security, which I guess is a direct result to the volatility that they're feeling in the world, as opposed to 27% who say that they're more attracted to brands that spark a sense of adventure and thrill-seeking. It's really interesting because you talk about the story of how Cannes evolved over the years. We used to be about kind of escapism and amazing experience and much more in marketing. Have you noticed that sort of shift in marketing, and how are you presenting to your audiences given that this is how they're feeling? How are you dealing with the fact that they're feeling fearful right now?
So the job I did before Samsung was Audi, the German car brand. And technology is very interesting because when there's new technology, disruptive technology, it's very often resented in the beginning, and people have a degree of fear. When the first cars started to drive around, you needed a person to walk in front of it with a big red flag to warn people that this mechanical horse was coming. When the first escalator was introduced in the tube in London Underground, you had to be accompanied by someone else because this was potentially very dangerous technology. And so I see the same thing with AI. People are to a degree concerned, and maybe that's a good thing. And just like the example I gave you about having a person walking in front of a car with a red flag, you need some kind of framework to use the technology. And so suddenly there was legislation put in place for how fast you're allowed to drive, on what side of the street you're allowed to drive, how old you have to be to drive, etc. And of course, with AI, I see that the governments need to do the same thing. There needs to be a framework that governs the way we're allowed to use AI, and it needs to be controlled. And I think we're at that point where the technology is now matured in a way that more and more people can use it. And therefore now the expectation is that we find ways of using it positively rather for something that could be bad.
And so those...
And now on to the Gen Z.
we found that consumers basically disengage with brands if they're not relevant. 76% agree about I'm just not, if they're not relevant to me, that's kind of obvious, but the percentage is pretty high. And if you're not authentic, again, disengage. So Samsung's lucky enough to be totally a household name. It's a legacy brand. How do you manage that balance of being around, but you keep that messaging to be authentic, fresh, and genuine and relevant? What kind of do you put in place to ensure that you're on point?
A couple of years ago, it became obvious that Gen Z have a different way of perceiving brand and brand communications. And so what we decided to do was to employ Gen Zers into our team, and we built a future generation team. And we equipped them with our Samsung products and asked them to create content for a Gen Z audience about our Samsung products. They edit everything themselves, so they're kind of their own studio, and they push it live using their Samsung products. And it's really helped us better understand how to communicate and how not to do things. So it's like having your own studio sitting within our more traditional marketing practice. We can all learn from them, and hopefully they can learn a little bit from us as well, because ultimately what the Gen Zers do as they become part of our team is understanding that it's not only about how many people have viewed your content or how many people have engaged with your content. At some point, that also needs to convert to sales. And I found it that there was kind of this moment in time where one of our future Gen Lab members had created a piece of content about the Samsung Frame TV, which is a really cool TV that when it's not a TV and you switch it off, rather than being a black box sitting on the wall, it shows the most amazing art from the best galleries and museums in the world. So he had created this piece of content about the Samsung Frame TV. He got his mother to star in this little clip that he did, and he pushed it live on a Friday. And it got millions of views over the weekend. And on Sunday, I check my email, and there's a little message from HQ, from Samsung in Korea, saying, with a link, have you seen this? Let's get a hold of this person and see if he can do more content for us. And I was very proud to be able to hit reply all going, he's already part of our team. And then I got to describe what our future generation team is all about.
I think that's brilliant. I think in the journey that we've had a year ago that we launched our Gen Z lab off the back of the data of 14 countries about Gen Zers around the world, it's just more simple, and you've just described it so brilliantly, than I think many people think to work with Gen Zers, that's the phrase, work with them. Don't try and guess them, don't try and second guess their feelings of positivity or negativity. And we also found in our research that a lot of the people that we talked to, client side, said, I'm really scared to do anything with them because I feel like they can cancel me or take me down, and I feel they're very activist orientated. And our data showed that they're actually not activists. They're not activists. They're actually action orientated. And as long as you show that you're in with them and that you're being authentic, you're being relevant, and you're taking action to help make the world a better place, which you've demonstrated really well, they'll commit. And so taking the fear out of working with Gen Z seems to be quite a big part of our job, and to sort of help reassure. So do you find that by having your Gen Zers there with you in your future generation lab, that you're kind of creating strategy with them, or is it more of a sort of content source, or you're actually sitting down with them and hearing from them as you're working on strategic marketing decisions?
Great ideas can come from anywhere. And if you don't have Gen Zers or millennials or at some point Gen Alphas in the room, if you don't have people with different cultures and different nationalities, people who speak different languages, have different cultural backgrounds, etc., if they're not present in your team, you're at risk of potentially missing people out. We also know, for instance, that between 15 and 20% of the workforce are neurodiverse. That includes myself. I have dyslexia. And so by having people who represent all kinds of shapes and lives, and by having them there, you can have these conversations, and you avoid trying to do post-constructions later on. You can have really good conversations up front. You can look at what the business challenges are, and hopefully have loads of lateral thinkers, lots of people with different backgrounds who can then overlay their view of it. And out of there comes a creative solution.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to us all being humans together, trying to reach other humans, which is much better than where we were with sort of demographics and targeting. And trust is really important. We're sitting in this studio doing the Trust Makers podcast. 79% of Gen Zers say it's important for them to trust the brands that they buy or use, and more than it was in the past. It's actually been the highest of any generation that we've seen, which is sort of interesting because you think you would have to trust a brand to buy it. Do you have a sort of insight as to why you think for Gen Z trust is even more important in marketing to them?
Gen Zers seem to have a built-in BS radar, and they can very, very quickly detect if something's authentic or not. But that might be true for other generations. I think what sets Gen Zers apart is that they're more verbal about it. They have grown up with access to technology. It's part of their life. They are kind of well-educated, they're well exposed to things, and it's much easier for them to see when something is true, when something is forced. And they seem to disregard forced, unauthentic things really quickly and be verbal about it. And so what you have to do, and it's not only for Gen Zers, you should always be authentic, but it's even more important that you get that authenticity right when you communicate with Gen Zers. But I think that you always have to be authentic. It's not just for Gen Zers. They've got a better built-in radar for it.
Yeah, I think it's been a forcing function for marketing writ large, and then it's kind of bled into other areas. In the data, we also see that the influence of Gen Z across all generations in terms of how I buy, what I see content-wise, how I engage is actually really far-reaching. It went up 7 points even in the last year. We talked about the cascade of influence. So hopefully it's actually enabling us to be more of all of those things, just generally anyway, which we should be. And I think that the safety and security part is probably, we see it acutely in Gen Z, but we're in challenge times. And one of the things that came through for the Gen Z data as well was, please can brands use their superpower in this scary world? Brands have a superpower to make things better, to reach out. You know, you have the marketing spend, you have the marketing ability, you have the marketing reach. Can you please use it for the power of good? And Cannes is a place of purpose. But what the Gen Zers and actually beyond are asking is actual action, not just, you know, the creative of the purpose being in the creative. And historically, we've seen purposeful creators, but it hasn't actually led to action. You've talked earlier in this podcast about all the things Samsung's doing. It's actually making an absolute difference. Do you see that going forward being more or less? How, when you hear about the superpower that you have for Gen Z, what does it make you feel in terms of helping the planet be a better place and helping business be better for the planet?
We have a big responsibility. And I think Gen Zers are maybe more vocal about it, but it applies to all of us. I'll give you a couple of examples. On your Samsung mobile phone, most people have a handful of apps. And sometimes you wonder about your privacy. What app has access to what information? What app can see all of your contacts, your calendar, access your microphone, access your camera? And so on the Samsung phone, it asks you, do you really want this app to be able to use the microphone, or only use the microphone if you've opened the app, or the camera, or your precise location? And that gives the user an ability to agree or disagree with each and every app what they should or shouldn't be allowed to do. It gives you more confidence, more privacy. That also extends to our TVs. We have privacy functions set into our TVs that you can change, because it's what should the TV know about your viewing habit. And so you can change that in the settings as well. But then we also do things that are a little bit different to give Gen Zers a view that this is something authentic, this is something real. Something we did was called Stem Drop, where we partnered with Max Martin, who's written many of the most famous songs that you've heard. We then partnered with TikTok, and we partnered with Universal Music and with Simon Cowell. So now you have all of these pieces in a puzzle, and if you lay them together, it allowed us to release a song which has never been created or produced before. People could then download the stems, the bits of the music, and using the Samsung mixer on TikTok, it allowed you to do the vocals or play your own instruments, mix it all together, and then you could upload that for other people to see. And what happened was that 1.5 million people decided to try it out, give it a go, become kind of the bedroom star. And those 1.5 million pieces of content were viewed 20.3 billion times by people who saw this new song being created, and all types of variation. I saw gospel and country and rap and a cappella. It was really cool, and it allows people, ordinary people at home, to be spotted as potential future artists. And they had Universal Music and Psycho and Simon Cowell there to spot them and to be able to be a potential future artist. And this is something that we at Samsung got really excited about. We have a kind of a foldable phone. We have a fold and a flip. You can now put it up like a tripod, and you could sing into it and do your things. And so in the past, you would have needed a studio and expensive hardware and software and quite a lot of technical knowledge for this to happen. Now you just need a Samsung phone, and suddenly you are an artist in your bedroom.
That's amazing. Doesn't account for my lack of voice, but apart from that, it sounds amazing and very cool and very relevant. It's really good, isn't it, how we see technology with your engineering capability. It's intuitive to our human life, and that's the perfect combination, helping my life be better. You've helped my life be better today on the podcast. Thank you so much, Benjamin. It's been so nice talking to you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to The Trustmakers.
Thank you for tuning into The Trustmakers, an Edelman podcast in partnership with Advertising Week, where we speak with leaders and other trust builders across institutions. See you next time.